The message arrived at Earth Diplomatic Command on a cold Tuesday morning. Daniel Carter was sitting in his office, reading through old files about alien languages, when his screen lit up with an urgent alert. He opened the message and read it 3 times to make sure he understood. The Cathari Dominion was inviting a human representative to attend a sacred ceremony at the Imperial Palace. No human had ever received such an invitation before. Daniel leaned back in his chair and thought about what this could mean. The Cathari were one of the oldest and most powerful empires in the galaxy. They had ships that could cross star systems in hours. They had weapons that could crack planets in half. And they had always looked at humanity like a farmer looks at insects in his field. For 50 years, humans had tried to build a relationship with the Cathari. For 50 years, the Cathari had treated them with cold silence and barely hidden disgust. Now, suddenly, they wanted a human at their most sacred ceremony. It did not feel right. General Martha Collins called him into her office an hour later. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many wars. "You know why I called you," she said. "The invitation," Daniel replied. "The invitation." She turned her screen toward him. "Every intelligence analyst we have says this is a trap. The Cathari do not invite outsiders to sacred events. They barely acknowledge that outsiders exist." Daniel nodded. "So why did they invite us?" "That is what you are going to find out." Martha stood up and walked to the window. Outside, ships were taking off and landing at the spaceport. "You are the best xenolinguist we have. You have studied the Cathari language for 20 years. If anyone can figure out what they are planning, it is you. And if it is a trap?" Martha turned to face him. "Then you will be walking into it with your eyes open. I am sending Nathan Cole with you. He's the best security officer in the fleet. But I will be honest with you, Daniel. If things go wrong on Cathari Prime, there is very little we can do to help you." Daniel understood. Cathari Prime was deep inside their territory. If the Cathar decided to kill him, no rescue mission could reach him in time. He accepted the assignment anyway. The journey to Cathari Prime took 3 weeks aboard the diplomatic vessel Horizon. Commander Derek Hayes ran a tight ship, and the crew treated Daniel with a mixture of respect and pity. Everyone knew he was walking into danger. Nathan Cole was a quiet man in his 30s, with a face that rarely showed emotion. He spent most of the journey checking weapons and studying palace layouts. When he did speak, his words were short and direct. "The Cathari stand 8 feet tall," Nathan said one evening as they reviewed intelligence reports. "Their scales can stop most small weapons fire. Their reflexes are faster than ours. If we have to fight our way out, we will not win. Then let us hope we do not have to fight," Daniel replied. Nathan looked at him for a long moment. "I hope you are right." Daniel spent his time studying everything known about Cathari culture. He read about their history, their religion, their social structure. He learned that they were ruled by an emperor who claimed to be descended from their gods. He learned that their priests held enormous power and that they guarded something called the sacred tongue with fanatical devotion. The sacred tongue was an ancient language used only in religious ceremonies. It was forbidden for outsiders to speak it. The punishment for breaking this law was death. Daniel found this interesting. Most advanced civilizations did not execute people for speaking words. The Cathari must believe the sacred tongue held real power. On the 15th day of the journey, Daniel received a coded message on his personal device. He did not recognize the sender. The message contained fragments of text in an unfamiliar script, along with a short warning. "The ceremony is not what it seems. Your people are in danger. Learn these words. They may save you." Daniel stared at the message for a long time. The script looked like the sacred tongue, though he could not be certain. Someone inside the palace was trying to help him. But who? And why? He decided to trust the mysterious sender. He memorized the fragments and studied their patterns. He could not understand their full meaning, but he began to recognize their structure and rhythm. Nathan noticed him working late into the night. "What are you doing?" "Preparing," Daniel said. "For what?" Daniel did not answer. He was not sure he knew the answer himself. On the final day before they reached Keth Ari Prime, Commander Hayes called Daniel to the bridge. The view screen showed their destination, a planet of deep purple oceans and silver continents. "Beautiful," Daniel said. "Beautiful and deadly," Hayes replied. "The atmospheric pressure down there would crush an unprotected human in seconds. You will need to stay inside the palace complex at all times." Daniel nodded. He was walking into a cage with no way out. As the horizon entered orbit, another message arrived from the mysterious sender. This one was shorter than the first. "Trust the third daughter. She is your only ally." Daniel did not know what this meant. He did not know who the third daughter was, but he stored the information in his mind and prepared himself for whatever was coming. The shuttle descended through thick clouds toward the Imperial Palace. Through the window, Daniel could see spires of crystal reaching toward the sky. The palace was enormous, larger than some cities on Earth. It floated above the planet's surface on platforms of glowing energy. Nathan sat beside him, his hand resting on his weapon. "Remember," Nathan said quietly. "Smile, be polite, and do not die." Daniel almost laughed. "That is your advice?" "It is the best advice I have." The shuttle landed on a platform of polished stone. The door opened, and cold air rushed in. Daniel took a deep breath and stepped out to meet his fate. Cathari guards stood waiting for them. They were tall, covered in scales that shimmered like oil on water. Their eyes were gold and emotionless. They did not speak a word of greeting. Daniel bowed slightly, a gesture of respect he had learned from his studies. The guards turned and walked away, expecting him to follow. Daniel followed. Behind him, Nathan stayed close, watching everything. The palace waited ahead, full of secrets and danger. And somewhere inside, the third daughter was waiting too. The Imperial Palace was designed to make visitors feel small. Daniel understood this the moment he stepped inside. The ceilings rose so high that clouds formed near the top. The walls were made of crystal that sang softly when the wind touched them. Everything was massive, ancient, and cold. The Cathari guards led Daniel and Nathan through endless corridors. They passed statues of emperors long dead, their stone eyes watching with silent judgment. They passed fountains that flowed with liquid silver. They passed windows that looked out over the purple ocean far below. Not once did the guards speak to them. Other Cathari watched from doorways and balconies. Nobles in flowing robes of gold and black. Priests in white with symbols painted on their scales. Servants in simple gray. All of them stared at Daniel like he was a strange animal brought in for their amusement. But Daniel noticed something else too. The servants did not look at him with disgust. They looked at him with something closer to hope. He filed this observation away for later. The guards finally stopped before a tall door carved with images of fire and stars. The door opened, and a figure stepped out. She was Cathari, but smaller than the others Daniel had seen. Her scales were pale blue, almost white, and her eyes were the color of deep water. She wore a simple robe without decoration. When she saw Daniel, her expression flickered with something he could not name. "I am Princess Valara," she said in careful English. "I will be your guide during your stay." Daniel bowed again. "I am honored, Princess." Valar did not respond to the courtesy. She simply turned and began walking. "Follow me. I will show you to your quarters." As they walked, Daniel studied her. She moved quickly, almost nervously. Her hands kept touching the edges of her robe, as if she did not know what to do with them. She avoided meeting his eyes. This was the third daughter, Daniel realized. the one his mysterious contact had told him to trust. Nathan walked beside Daniel, his eyes constantly moving. He was mapping the palace, counting guards, noting exits. Daniel appreciated his dedication, even if escape was impossible. Valara brought them to a suite of rooms on one of the lower levels. The chambers were comfortable, a plain compared to what Daniel had seen elsewhere in the palace. A message was clear. Humans did not deserve luxury. The ceremony will take place tomorrow at midday, Valara said from the doorway. You will be summoned when it is time. What kind of ceremony is it? Daniel asked. Valara hesitated. For just a moment, her mask slipped, and Daniel saw fear in her eyes. A judgment, she said quietly. Then she was gone. Nathan swept the rooms for listening devices. He found 3 and disabled them carefully. When he was finished, he sat down across from Daniel. She is afraid, Nathan said. Double quotes, yes. Afraid of what? Her own people? Daniel thought about the message he had received. The ceremony is not what it seems. I think she is afraid of what they are planning to do. That evening, a formal dinner was held in one of the smaller halls. Daniel was seated at the far end of a long table, separated from the Kethari nobles by an ocean of empty chairs. The message was clear once again. He was not welcome. The High Priestess Solara sat at the head of the table. She was ancient. Her scales faded to dull gray, but her eyes burned with fierce intelligence. She spoke to the nobles in their own language, and they laughed at whatever she said. Then she spoke in the sacred tongue. Daniel kept his face blank and pretended not to understand. But thanks to his mysterious contact, he recognized some of the words. The priestess was not making pleasant conversation. She was describing humans as vermin. She was calling for their destruction. The nobles nodded in agreement. Daniel ate his food in silence and gave no sign that he understood anything. But inside, his heart was pounding. This was not a diplomatic invitation. This was a death sentence being prepared for all of humanity. After dinner, Daniel returned to his quarters. Nathan reported that guards were watching their door around the clock. They were prisoners in everything but name. Hours passed. Daniel tried to sleep, but could not. His mind kept turning over the problem. How could he stop what was coming? He was one man in a palace full of enemies. A soft knock came at his door just past midnight. Daniel opened it to find Princess Valara standing in the darkness. She looked terrified. May I come in? She whispered. Daniel stepped aside. Valara entered, and Nathan immediately moved to check the corridor. When he returned, he nodded. She had come alone. I am the one who sent you the messages, Valara said. Her voice was barely louder than a breath. I know what you must think of me. I am Kethari. I am the enemy. But I do not want this. I do not want war. Daniel studied her face. Tell me what the ceremony really is. Valara closed her eyes. Tomorrow, my father will declare humanity a threat to galactic order. He will use the sacred tongue to invoke ancient laws that justify any action against your people. Then he will order the fleet to destroy Earth. The words hit Daniel like a physical blow. Can anything stop this? There is one way. Valara opened her eyes and looked directly at him. The ancient law of Rethani. If someone speaks the words of challenge in the sacred tongue, they can demand a trial of truth. Even my father cannot refuse this. It would delay the judgment and give your people time. But a human cannot speak the sacred tongue, Daniel said. No, it is forbidden. The punishment is death. Daniel understood now. If he wanted to save Earth, he would have to break the most sacred law of the Kethari. And even if he succeeded, he would likely die for it. Will you teach me the words of challenge? He asked. Valara stared at him. You would do this? You would risk death? For my people? Yes. Tears formed in her strange blue eyes. She reached out and took his hand. her scales cool against his skin. "Then I will teach you," she said, "and may the gods forgive us both." They began to practice. The sacred tongue was unlike any language Daniel had ever studied. Every sound carried weight. Every syllable held meaning beyond simple translation. Velara was patient. She corrected his pronunciation again and again. She explained the rhythm and the flow. She warned him that a single mistake could doom him. As the hours passed, Daniel felt something unexpected. He began to understand not just the words, but the spirit behind them. The sacred tongue was not meant to exclude. It was meant to preserve truth. Somewhere along the way, the Cathari had forgotten this. Dawn was approaching when Velara finally stopped. "You are ready," she said, "or as ready as you can be." Daniel nodded. His throat was sore from practicing, but his mind was clear. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. "You are risking everything." Velara stood by the window, watching the first light touch the crystal spires. "Because I have read the old histories," she said quietly. "My people were not always like this. We used to seek understanding, not conquest. We used to welcome differences, not fear them. I want to believe we can be that way again." She turned to face him. "And because you came here knowing it might be a trap, and you came anyway. That takes courage. My people have forgotten what courage looks like when it is not holding a weapon." Daniel smiled despite everything. "I am terrified." "Good," Velara said. "So am I." She left before the sun rose fully. Daniel stood alone in his quarters, preparing to speak the forbidden words that might save his world or end his life. Either way, he would not stay silent. The morning passed slowly. Daniel sat in his quarters and waited for the summons that would bring him to the ceremony. Nathan checked his weapons for the 10th time, even though they both knew the weapons would not save them if things went wrong. "You should tell me what you are planning," Nathan said. Daniel considered this. Nathan deserved to know. He was risking his life too. "I am going to speak the sacred tongue," Daniel said. Nathan stopped what he was doing. "That is forbidden. They will kill you." "Maybe, but if I do not speak, they will kill everyone on Earth." Nathan was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "What do you need me to do?" "Stay alive. If I succeed, someone needs to tell Earth what happened. If I fail, someone needs to warn them what is coming." "I understand." Nathan stood and extended his hand. Daniel took it. "It has been an honor serving with you. The honor is mine." They did not speak again. There was nothing left to say. At midday, guards arrived to escort them to the grand ceremonial hall. The walk through the palace felt longer than before. Daniel noticed that more Cathari had gathered to watch him pass. Word had spread that the human would attend the sacred ceremony. They wanted to see what would happen. The grand ceremonial hall was the largest space Daniel had ever seen. The ceiling rose so high it disappeared into shadow. Thousands of Cathari nobles filled the chamber, standing in perfect rows according to their rank. Their scales reflected the light from floating crystals, creating a sea of shimmering colored at the far end of the hall. The emperor sat on a throne of living crystal. Cathvorn was ancient beyond measure. His scales had faded to silver, and his eyes held the weight of centuries. He did not move as Daniel entered. He barely seemed to breathe. The high priestess Solara stood before the throne, holding a staff topped with a glowing orb. She wore ceremonial robes covered in symbols. Daniel now recognized from the sacred tongue. Princess Velara stood among the royal family to the emperor's right. She was pale, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She did not look at Daniel. She could not afford to show any connection to him. Daniel was led to a platform in the center of the hall. He stood alone, surrounded by thousands of aliens who wanted him dead. Nathan was placed in an observation gallery high above, too far away to help. The ceremony began. Solara raised her staff and spoke in the common Kethari language. She welcomed the nobles and thanked them for attending this historic event. She praised the Emperor's wisdom and the strength of the Dominion. Then she switched to the sacred tongue. Daniel understood every word. Valara had taught him well. The priestess spoke of humanity as a disease spreading through the galaxy. She described humans as violent, unpredictable, and dangerous. She claimed that Earth was a breeding ground for chaos that would eventually threaten all civilized worlds. She listed crimes that humans had not committed. She twisted facts into lies. She painted a picture of monsters that needed to be destroyed before they destroyed everything else. The nobles listened in reverent silence. They believed every word. Daniel felt anger rising in his chest. His people were not perfect. They had made mistakes. But they were not the monsters Solara described. They did not deserve extinction. Solara reached the climax of her speech. She raised her staff high and called upon the ancient laws to declare humanity guilty of crimes against galactic order. She asked the Emperor to authorize the immediate destruction of Earth. The Emperor rose from his throne. His voice was deep and cold when he spoke. He agreed with the priestess. Humanity was guilty. The sentence was death. He raised his hand to make the decree official. Daniel stepped forward. The hall fell completely silent. Every eye turned to him. Guards reached for their weapons. Solara stared at him with undisguised hatred. "You are not permitted to speak," she hissed. Daniel ignored her. He opened his mouth and spoke in the sacred tongue. The effect was like a bomb exploding. Nobles gasped and stumbled backward. Priests cried out in shock. Even the Emperor's eyes widened with disbelief. A human was speaking the forbidden language. A human was speaking it correctly. Daniel spoke the words of challenge exactly as Valar had taught him. He invoked the ancient law of Erfadani. He demanded a trial of truth. He cited the original purpose of the sacred tongue: to seek truth, to protect justice, to ensure that no judgment was made in darkness. His voice echoed through the vast hall. Every word rang clear and true. When he finished, silence hung in the air like a physical weight. Solara screamed for the guards to kill him. "He has defiled the sacred tongue. Execute him." Guards moved forward, weapons raised. "Stop." The Emperor's command froze everyone in place. Kethvorin descended from his throne, moving slowly, his ancient bones creaking with each step. He walked until he stood directly in front of Daniel. "How did you learn our sacred language?" The Emperor asked. Daniel met his eyes without flinching. "The language does not belong to you. It belongs to truth." Kethvorin stared at him for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he laughed. It was a cold, bitter sound. Clever words from a clever species. The Emperor turned to face his court. The human has invoked Verthani. He has spoken the words of challenge correctly. By ancient law, we cannot kill him. By ancient law, we must grant the trial of truth. Solara stepped forward. "My Emperor, this is madness. He is human. The law was not meant for animals." "The law is the law," Kethvorin replied. "It does not say the challenger must be Kethari. It says only that they must speak the sacred tongue with true understanding." He looked at Daniel again. "And he has done this." Valar stepped forward from the royal family. Her voice was steady despite her fear. "I confirmed that the words of challenge were spoken correctly. The trial of truth must proceed." Solara turned on her with fury. You taught him." "I taught him nothing but the truth," Valar said. "Which is more than you have spoken today." The court erupted into chaos. Nobles argued and shouted. Priests pointed fingers and made accusations. Guards looked to their commanders for orders that did not come. Through it all, Daniel stood still. He had won this battle. But the war was not over. The Emperor raised his hand, and silence fell again. "The trial of truth will proceed," he announced. "The human will answer 3 questions in the Chamber of Echoes. If he speaks truly, the judgment against humanity will be reconsidered. If he lies, he will die, and Earth will burn." He looked at Daniel one final time. "Prepare yourself, human. The Chamber of Echoes has destroyed stronger beings than you." Daniel bowed his head slightly. "I will speak the truth. I have nothing to fear from truth." The Emperor smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "We shall see." Guards led Daniel away. As he passed Velara, their eyes met for just a moment. She gave him the smallest nod. He had spoken the forbidden words. Now he had to survive what came next. The Chamber of Echoes lay deep beneath the Imperial Palace. Daniel was led down stairs carved from solid rock, past ancient symbols that glowed with soft light. The air grew colder with each step. The weight of the palace pressed down from above. The guards stopped before a door of black metal. There were no handles or locks. The door simply was, waiting for those who had business beyond it. "The chamber will open when you are ready," one of the guards said. It was the first time any of them had spoken to Daniel directly. "How do I know when I'm ready?" Daniel asked. "You do not. The chamber decides." Daniel stood before the door and waited. Minutes passed. He thought about Earth, about his family, about all the people who would die if he failed. He thought about the truth and whether he really had nothing to fear from it. Then he thought about Velara, who had risked everything to give him this chance. He would not waste it. The door opened silently. Beyond lay a circular room of polished black stone. The walls curved upward into a dome covered with crystals that pulsed with faint light. In the center of the room was a simple platform where Daniel was expected to stand. Around the edges of the chamber sat the council that would judge him. The Emperor occupied the tallest chair. The High Priestess Solara sat beside him, her eyes full of hatred. Elders in robes of deep purple filled the remaining seats. These were the keepers of Kethari law, the final authorities on truth and judgment. Princess Velara was not present. She had been forbidden from speaking in his defense. Daniel stepped onto the platform. The moment his feet touched the stone, something changed in the air. He felt a pressure against his mind, gentle but constant. The Chamber of Echoes was reading him, measuring him, preparing to expose any lie he might speak. "You stand in the Chamber of Echoes," the Emperor announced. "This place was built before our people had names. It was built to serve one purpose, to find truth. No lie can survive here. No deception can hide. If you speak falsely, you will die before the words leave your mouth." Daniel nodded. "I understand. You will answer 3 questions. Your answers will determine the fate of your species." The Emperor leaned forward. "Do you accept this trial?" "I accept." Solara rose from her seat. "Then let the trial of truth begin." She walked to the edge of the platform and stared down at Daniel. "First question. Does humanity seek to destroy the Kethari Dominion?" The pressure against Daniel's mind increased. He felt it searching for any trace of dishonesty, any hidden agenda he might be concealing. "No," Daniel said clearly. "Humanity does not seek to destroy the Kethari Dominion. We seek survival. We seek cooperation. We seek the chance to prove that we deserve a place among the stars. We have never wanted war with your people. We have only wanted a chance to be heard." The crystals in the dome pulsed brighter. A deep tone resonated through the chamber, vibrating in Daniel's bones. "The chamber confirms truth," one of the elders announced. Solara's expression did not change, but Daniel saw her jaw tighten. She had expected him to fail on the first question. "Second question," she continued. "Did humanity know that this ceremony was designed to condemn them before they arrived?" Daniel considered his answer carefully. He could not lie, but he could choose his words. We suspected it, he admitted. Our intelligence suggested that the invitation might be a trap. We knew that the Kethari had never invited humans to sacred events before. We knew that many in your government viewed us as a threat. Yet you came anyway, Solara interrupted. Why? Because hope is stronger than fear. Daniel looked at the council, meeting their eyes one by one. Humans have a saying, it is better to extend a hand in peace than a fist in anger. We came because we believed there might be a chance for real dialogue. We came because shutting doors never opens them. The deep tone resonated again. The chamber confirms truth, the elder said. 2 questions answered. One remained. The emperor rose from his seat. He walked slowly to the platform, his ancient body moving with careful purpose. When he stood before Daniel, their eyes were level despite the difference in their heights. I will ask the final question, Cathvorin said. I have ruled this dominion for 3,000 years. I have seen species rise and fall. I have made decisions that shaped the galaxy. Now I look at your species, so young and chaotic, and I wonder what you truly are. He paused. The chamber was completely silent. If humanity had the power to destroy the Kethari, would they use it? The pressure against Daniel's mind became almost unbearable. This was the question designed to trap him. If he said no, and any part of him believed humans might choose destruction, the chamber would detect the lie. If he said yes, he would be admitting that humanity was the threat Solara claimed. Daniel closed his eyes and searched his heart for the truth. Some would, he said finally. Humanity is not a single mind. We contain the capacity for great evil and great good. Some of my people would choose destruction if they had the power. Some would choose revenge for every slight and insult we have received from your empire. Solara smiled in triumph. The elders murmured to each other. But I do not speak for them, Daniel continued. I speak for those who believe in something better. I speak for those who look at the stars and see possibility instead of enemies. I speak for the teachers and the healers and the dreamers who believe that understanding is more powerful than force. He opened his eyes and looked directly at the Emperor. Humanity would not destroy the Kethari, because doing so would destroy a part of ourselves. Every species we meet, every culture we encounter, adds something to our understanding of the universe. To destroy rather than to learn would be the greatest failure we can imagine. It would make us the monsters you already believe we are. And we are not monsters. We are just young. We are just trying to find our place. The chamber fell silent. The crystals in the dome flickered rapidly, processing his words. Searching for any deception, the deep tone resonated once more. The chamber confirms truth, the elder announced. Solara stared at Daniel in disbelief. Impossible. He must have deceived the chamber somehow. Humans are liars by nature. The chamber cannot be deceived, the Emperor said quietly. You know this, priestess. You have relied on it for centuries to justify your judgments. He turned away from Daniel and walked back to his seat. For a long moment, he sat in silence, his ancient face unreadable. The human has passed the trial of truth, Cathvorin announced. By ancient law, the judgment against humanity must be reconsidered. The attack on Earth is suspended. Relief flooded through Daniel so strongly he almost fell. His people would live. At least for now. This is not over, Solara hissed. The human may have spoken truth today, but humans are chaotic and unpredictable. They will prove themselves monsters eventually. Perhaps, the Emperor replied. Or perhaps we will prove ourselves wrong about them. He looked at Daniel with something that might have been respect. You have courage, human. More courage than many of my own people. I do not promise friendship. I do not promise trust. But I will give your species a chance to prove what you truly are. Daniel bowed deeply. That is all we have ever asked." The trial was over. The Chamber of Echoes had found him worthy. But as Daniel was led back up to the palace, he knew the real work was just beginning. The days that followed the trial of truth were unlike anything Daniel had expected. The palace that had been so cold and hostile began to change. Not completely, and not quickly, but the change was real. Nobles who had refused to look at him now nodded when they passed. Servants who had hidden their hope now smiled openly. Even some of the priests seemed curious about the human who had spoken their sacred language and survived. Daniel met with the emperor twice more before leaving. The conversations were careful, each word measured and weighed. Kefvarn was not ready to call humans allies, but he was willing to call them interesting. For the Cathari, this was enormous progress. "You have given my people something rare," the emperor said during their final meeting. "You have given us doubt. For 3,000 years, we have been certain of our place in the universe, certain that we were the greatest civilization, the keepers of truth, the rightful rulers of the stars. Now we are not so certain. Is doubt a gift?" Daniel asked. "It is the greatest gift. Certainty makes us blind. Doubt makes us look." Kefvarn almost smiled. "Perhaps that is what humans offer the galaxy. Not strength or technology or resources. Perhaps you offer doubt." Daniel thought about this often in the years that followed, but before he left the palace, there was one more person he needed to see. Princess Valara met him in the garden where they had first truly spoken. The plants here were strange, growing in spirals of purple and silver, but they were beautiful in their alien way. "You are leaving," Valara said. "I must return to Earth. There is much to report and much to prepare." Daniel paused. "I wanted to thank you before I left." "Thank me?" Valara shook her head. "I put you in terrible danger. I asked you to risk your life for my plan. You should hate me. I could never hate you." Daniel took her hand gently. "You gave me the words that saved my world. You gave me hope when I had none. You showed me that the Cathari are not the cold empire they pretend to be. There are people like you here. People who want something better." Valara's eyes glistened. "I want to believe we can change. But change is slow, and the old ways are strong. The priestess will not forgive what happened. She will work to turn my father against your people again. Then we will have to work faster than her." Daniel smiled. "Humans are good at that. We are impatient by nature." Valara laughed softly. It was the first time he had heard her laugh. "What will you do now?" Daniel asked. "I will use the sacred tongue as it was meant to be used. I will speak truth to my people, even when they do not want to hear it. I will remind them of who we once were and who we could be again." She squeezed his hand. "And I will make sure they never forget what happened here. A human walked into our palace, faced our most sacred judgment, and spoke the truth. That story will spread. That story will matter. Stories are powerful things." Daniel agreed. "They are the most powerful things." Valar released his hand and stepped back. "Go home, Daniel Carter. Tell your people what happened. Tell them they have a friend among the stars, even if that friend must be careful about showing it." Daniel bowed to her, a gesture of deep respect. "Until we meet again, Princess. Until we meet again." Nathan was waiting at the shuttle when Daniel arrived. The security officer looked relieved to see him alive. "I was starting to wonder if they had changed their minds about letting us go," Nathan said. "They had plenty of time to decide." Daniel looked back at the palace one final time. "But I think they are as ready for us to leave as we are to go." The shuttle lifted off and carried them back to the horizon. Commander Hayes was waiting in the docking bay, along with most of the crew. They had heard what happened. News traveled fast, even across species. "Ambassador Carter," Hayes said, using the title Daniel had earned. "I have never seen anything like what you did down there. The entire galaxy is talking about it. The galaxy talks about many things, Daniel replied. What matters is what comes next. The horizon left Cathari space slowly, watched by patrol ships that followed at a distance but did not interfere. They were being allowed to leave. That alone was a victory. Daniel spent most of the journey home writing his report. He documented everything that had happened, every word that had been spoken, every moment that had mattered. He wanted Earth to understand not just what he had done, but why it had worked. Humans had always believed they were alone in their strength. They had always feared the aliens with better ships and bigger weapons. But Daniel had learned something important on Cathari Prime. Power was not just about weapons. Power was about words and truth, and the courage to speak when silence was easier. Power was about standing in front of an empire and refusing to bow. Power was about believing in something greater than fear. Humanity had that power. They had always had it. They just needed to remember. On the final day of the journey, a message arrived from Cathari Prime. It was encoded in the sacred tongue, and only Daniel could read it. The message was from Velara. My father has agreed to open formal diplomatic channels with Earth. It is a small step, but it is a step. The priestess is furious, but she cannot stop this. The old laws protect what we have begun. Keep speaking truth, Daniel. Keep showing my people what humanity can be. And know that whatever happens, you have a friend who believes in you. The message ended with a single phrase that made Daniel smile. Until we meet again. Nathan found Daniel in the observation deck, watching Earth grow larger in the view screen. Good news? Nathan asked, nodding at the message device in Daniel's hand. The best news. Daniel put the device away and stood up. We are going to have official diplomatic relations with the Cathari Dominion. Real talks, real negotiations, real chances for peace. Because of what you did? Because of what we did. All of us. The crew that brought us there safely. The people on Earth who prepared me for this. The princes who risked everything to give me a chance. Daniel looked at Nathan. And you, for keeping me alive long enough to speak. Nathan shrugged, but he was smiling. That is my job. The horizon entered Earth's orbit an hour later. Daniel looked down at the blue and green world that had nearly been destroyed. Billions of people lived their lives down there, unaware of how close they had come to annihilation. They would never know. And that was probably for the best. But Daniel knew. And he would spend the rest of his life making sure that the chance he had won was not wasted. Humanity had spoken the forbidden words. Now, they had to live up to them. Commander Hayes made the announcement. Over the ship's communication system. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome home. We did the impossible out there. We made history. But our work is just beginning. Daniel nodded in agreement. The stars were waiting. The galaxy was watching. And humanity was finally ready to speak.